Good. All right. Okay, I'm going to call the March 26, 2004 regular council meeting to order, and I will begin with a land acknowledgement that the city of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta, District 11, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. And we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. And no, I don't have this memorized like certain people. So welcome everyone. So we have no consent agenda items. So the first item of business will be approval of the March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Nguyen, whoops, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll move that council approve the minutes of the March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing or hearing any, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. The next item is delegations. So if there's anybody in our audience who would like to speak to any of the items that are not part of an item that will have a public hearing. So if anybody wants to talk about the Youth Council or the RCMP request, this would be your time to come up to the podium to do so. And I'm not seeing anybody racing forward, so we will move forward and begin with our new business, which is a presentation from our Youth Council. So I'll invite Christy Wall and anybody you would like to have join you to the front, and you can do introductions. So welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Christy Wall. I'm the Youth and Family Coordinator, and I'm the lucky person to liaison between Youth Council and the city. And I'm here to support two members today that are going to present to you.
Hi, my name is Colby Mask. I'm the current chair of the Youth Council.
Hi, my name is Lebron Makaya. I'm a current vice chair.
Today I'm here to present to you about to inform council of some changes the Youth Council have recently made to our terms of reference and seek council's approval for these amendments. The changes we made fall into two general categories. The first consists of changes we made to some of our outdated procedural bylaws to keep them up to date, and this was done in accordance with advice provided to us by Legislative Services. The other changes we made were designed to make our terms of reference more relevant and accommodating to youth needs and increase the accessibility of our council to youth. Previously, our terms of reference prohibited anyone who lives outside of the fort from being a member. However, we amended so now that youth who live outside the city but still go to school and do most of their business here can be a part of the Youth Council. As well, our previous terms of reference prohibited members of the Youth Council from being employed by the city in any form. However, we amended it so that only full-time employees can no longer be members of the Youth Council. This way, members of the Youth Council can take advantage of the plethora of wonderful summer employment opportunities that the city offers. We're happy to report now that we have increased our membership from 4 all the way up to 12 youth members. And with this larger number of youth councillors, we've been able to start working on subcommittees and digging into various goals, and we look forward to coming back in the future and presenting to you on the work that these subcommittees have been doing. And thank you for your time.
So that's our presentation. We are bringing forward a new terms of reference that we do need mayor and council approval for because our youth council was approved by mayor and council. So our terms of reference have to be, any updates that we make to them, we need to bring forward for approval.
Okay, so I do see that there is an administrative recommendation. Typically, we don't do that through these, but I can make it germane to it following the presentation. But I will open it up to any questions first. And then if a member of council wishes to put that motion on, who's on our youth council? That's Councillor Abatoye. Then I would invite them to do that as germane to this presentation. So let's open it up to questions first and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so I'll jump in there first. So would you like to talk a little bit about what you have been working on, maybe? Like, give us an idea.
Yeah, sure. We're proud to report that within this last month here, we recently worked with the Fort Saskatchewan Food Bank to conduct the Fort Saskatchewan Food Bank Challenge with with 4 of the schools here in Fort Saskatchewan. And through that, we were able to raise 981 pounds of food to the food bank. And we're very proud of that. As well, we've been working with committees such as the policing committee and the Parks Department, as well as transportation and Parks and Rec, and we look forward to continue to learn more about what they do and work with them in the future. We yet have any solid idea of what these partnerships will look like yet.
Okay. And come on, guys, you're letting them off the hook. I mean, we get them once. This is our committee update. Councillor Macon.
It's not really a question. I sit on the policing committee, and we've started engaging with the youth council, and I know that we both have subcommittees that have been formed now, and I really look forward to working with your subcommittee on the community engagement portion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, no, not yet. So I'm just going to ask one additional question. So with the youth committee, so you've increased your membership to 12 now, and just talk to me about how you roll this out to other youth.
Might I ask, like, what you mean, how we roll it out to other youth?
Well, so the 12 of you would meet on a regular basis, and then how do you convey information out to, I'll say to the public, but specifically to other youth? So if I were to hear from one of our youth in our community and they say, we never hear anything about that, I'd just like to know, like, just talk a little bit about your processes.
Yeah. So far, we do have the separate subcommittees, and then we do meet once a month within our main committee to kind of discuss what each subcommittee's been up to. And then within these, we do the Fort Record article. So once a month, one of our counselors will do a article within the Fort Record, kind of about what our council's been doing, and particularly about what a sub-council that they've been on have been doing. And then recently with that Fort Saskatchewan Food Bank Challenge, we went into, I believe it was OLA, and we gave them a presentation and just kind of said what our involvement was and how we kind of created the School Food Bank Challenge. And we kind of hope to continue to do similar stuff like that, as well as posting posters in school, and we'll hopefully also look forward to investigating new avenues for how we can do that.
Okay. I'm going to ask one last question. So with the youth council, do you feel it brings the youth, gives them a greater sense of belonging within the community, that you're owning what's going on? Somebody.
Yeah, we hope that by working with all these different committees that we can bring a youth voice and perspective to them and their decision-making processes, because in reality, a lot of these committees, like the policing committee or the Parks Department, are the ones actually making decisions in the community or making things happen. And so we believe that by advising them on youth opinions, and working with them, we are able to incorporate youth ideas and make youth opinions more heard within our community.
Okay, thank you very much, and you're very well versed and very well spoken, and I know this one from school quite a bit, so. Councillor Harris?
I have one question. If council could do one thing in the immediate future to make it more, I guess, more attractive for youth to enjoy life in our community, what could we do, in your opinion, based on what you've seen so far?
We'd need to come back and present to council on that further, but we do believe that the pool is a step in the right direction, and looking at a new aquatics facility, or at least a proposal, is something that youth might be interested in, and that certainly our council has been interested in.
Well, that's good to hear, because it's going to be an interesting discussion around this table. So thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, so just stay where you are. Microphone sounds bad. Okay, I'm told my microphone sounds bad. So, okay, I'm watching you on the screen. Does that sound better, Councillor Kelly, if I'm further back? Yeah, okay, so I'll sit further back from my microphone. So, a recommendation has been put forward. Councillor Abatoye, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'll make a motion that Council approves the updated Youth Council terms of reference for the Fort Saskatchewan Youth Council as attached as Appendix B to the March 26, 2024 Council report.
All right, I'll accept that motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Absolutely, yes. So I have sat on this Youth Council for, I'll say, a couple years now, and it's been really awesome to see how the group has grown from just 4 members to 12. It's been amazing, and it's a true testament to this girl. Christy has been doing an amazing job going into the schools and promoting the Youth Council and just getting all these youths interested. Today we have Carla and Dara in the audience as well, and probably a few others watching online. So I mean, these youths are doing great jobs. Like, they currently have a subcommittee for engaging parks and natural spaces, safe communities, mental health and family doctor access, which has been a challenge for the youths in our community, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as youth serving organization partnerships. And I think that will be an example will be collaborations like with what we're doing with the policing committee and the food bank and whatnot. So just thank you for all you're doing. The terms of reference, I know we've reviewed a few times already, even with the legislative departments. So definitely I'm in support of the, changes, and just really encouraged to see how passionate that, these kids come. Sorry, you're not kids. Some of you are adults. So I take that back. How, this youth are so passionate about this job that they're doing, and just say well done.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is being spoken in favor. It's now open for discussion and debate. Councillor Blizzard.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is a good change. I think the Youth Council is a good thing. I'm glad to see that it's full. I guess one question I have, I like the changes, especially you'd hate to have to step down from the Youth Council in order to accept a summer job. So I like that change. Living outside the city is a good idea, except, are you, and I know I was on the applications committee hearing some of them, but I assume you have some criteria, that minimum involvement in the city either, and I saw that you said that, but through that interview process, you'll check and make sure that the youth outside of the city are still heavily involved in the city to make sure that they're useful, relevant.
You might notice that one of our criteria is that they attend school in our community. So do that, or do a majority of their business, which, and we have a youth that we lost, but we're able to keep them because they moved to Gibbons, but they still go to school in Fort Saskatchewan. So, and
I suppose the same would go with if they have a job here, because I think the youth, the Youth Council accepts, is it up until 24?
Up until 24.
So if someone's got to say a full-time job, that still makes them heavily involved in the city, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It looks good, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Great. Thank you. Okay. It doesn't appear to be any additional questions or comment or debate. So, Councillor Abatoye, anything on close?
Actually, I missed one thing. We just actually literally interviewed LeBron a few months ago, and he's right before council doing a presentation. So I just wanted to, acknowledge that and say thank you for what you're doing. And of course, Colby has been here for many, many council meetings, and he continues to show up as the chair. So well done. Thank you.
All right, the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. So good job. That's how you get things done. So thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. All right. Okay, the next item we have is RCMP officer request. We have Inspector Barry LaRocque and Corinne Rayner presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Corinne Rayner, and I'm the Director of Protective Services for the City. With me, I have Inspector Barry LaRocque, our Detachment Commander of the Fort Saskatchewan RCMP. We are here to present a request for one additional RCMP officer for 2025 and another additional officer for 2027. This request would normally come through the budget process, but we are bringing it to Council early so that we can go through the RCMP's process of calling up that resource, and the RCMP has up to 1 year to put that position into place. So that's why we are here a little bit earlier outside of the budget process. Through our Municipal Police Service agreement we have with the RCMP, the City can request RCMP resources, and a letter will go to the Minister of Public Safety, and then, like I said, the RCMP have 1 year to fulfill that position. The last increase to the RCMP General Duty Police was 8 years ago in 2016. One regular member was added to frontline policing back in 2016. Then in 2019, we had a request for 3 officers over the span of 3 years. So 1 additional officer was added in 2019 for our General Investigation Unit, 1 in 2020 for the Traffic and Crime Reduction Unit, and then the last officer we added was in 2021 for our Domestic Violence Coordinator. These specialized RCMP units help support and enhance our policing in Fort Saskatchewan. And being that it's been 8 years since we've done a regular duty member, this resource requested today will help with maintaining effective policing in Fort Saskatchewan. I'll turn it over to Inspector LaRocque to give details on this resource request.
So in front of you is the our current establishment in the detachment. So we have 33 established municipal positions and 8 provincial positions. And as you can see up there, the ones that are kind of that brownish color are the positions that are funded through the provincial contract. The rest of them, excluding the superintendent at the top, are all funded by the municipality. As you can see on the left-hand side, we have 4 watches. 1 watch only has 5 constables, as previous detachment commander moved one of those positions over to the GIS position to augment that specific unit. The ask that we're coming before council for 2025, we're asking for another general duty member to then go into that watch 2 position. That would then make 6 positions and equally or more distribute the work evenly. One of the realities of policing currently is vacancy rate. Currently, we have around 4.5 full-time employees each year off, and that's off on maternity, paternity, that's off ODS, that's off on mental health. And that's just the reality. I was recently part of a meeting that said in the province of Alberta, we have 300 members that are off longer than 30 days ODS. And in comparison, in the Edmonton Police Service, they have about that same amount. And we have a whole lot more officers than the city of Edmonton. A hard vacancy, we currently have 2 that we are working with our staffing to get filled in the next, hopefully about 3 months, and we have 2 people identified to come in and fill those spots. And like I said, the soft vacancies are the ones that we cannot predict. Well, we can on some in terms of maternities, but in the past year, we've had people go off with heart problems. We've had people go off with back problems that have had surgeries on their back. And then certainly we have people off with mental health issues as well. So our resource request that we're coming before council is to look at adding a position in 2025, and then in principle, looking at adding a position in 2027. There's kind of 3 areas that we are looking at in terms of the drivers to our ask here today. And the first one is population growth. Fort Saskatchewan population has been growing at a rate of about 2% per year, reaching just over 28,000 in 2023. Following the announcement of the Path to Zero project, we anticipate a temporary increase to that growth rate, leading to an estimated population of just under 32,000 by 2026. The general population, along with the additional shadow population that's going to be brought about with all the construction in the area, and commuter traffic in that expansion process, there's likely be an increased calls for service to the police. The shadow population that will be coming with the construction that's just in the city and just outside the city, there's going to be city hotels are going to be used up more. There's going to probably be apartment rentals. There's going to be room rentals likely in all of that, and those will inevitably involve more calls for service. We can anticipate that the licensed establishments and restaurants will have an increased usage. There will be some increased calls for service on the work sites themselves. I've been out to a couple of them already, and we've had drugs onto the work sites, and these are the work sites within the city limits. There will be a significant increase in traffic. Volume along 15 and 21 and other major streets like Southwood Boulevard, Range Road 224, and 86th Avenue. So we're anticipating, even with the bus traffic that is going to be taking away some of the individual commuter traffic, we're still anticipating a greater use on resources. And even without even with the shadow population coming in, we are also going to see that continued growth. I believe mayor and council are making Fort Saskatchewan an attractive place to live. It's close enough to the city that they get all the amenities. So I think you're going to continue to see, and as a resident of the community, I hope I'm right, is that you're going to see an increased population coming here. The second driver of our ask here today is the complexity of investigations. And some who might have heard me speak at our town hall is, well, I'll make reference to that. Crime is evolving, and very few criminal investigations are simple, linear, and straightforward anymore. The most basic criminal investigation requires an increased investment of time to complete, whether going to court or to meet the expectations of the public. What were once simple complaints of thefts, mischiefs, and assaults are now complicated, requiring the drafting of judicial authorizations, specialized interviewing techniques, complex complainants that we're dealing with, and cross-jurisdictional interoperability and specialized resources. Complex crimes such as fraud, and these are the grandparent scams, the Bitcoin scams, etc., sextortion, sexual exploitation of children are being investigated by Fort Saskatchewan specialized sections. That would be our GIS section. But due to the volume of these are falling back on our general duty resources as well. So we actually were in a meeting this morning with Karina and I in which there was a $150,000 fraud that crossed into jurisdictions into Ontario and into Calgary. And it was our member that doing the work on the complaint that came out of here that did a Canada-wide warrant, and the gentleman was arrested in Calgary for all of the different things. Our general duty members historically never did that type of work. That would be our specialized sections, but because of the volume that we're seeing, especially from the frauds, that work is being displaced down to our frontline people. And I can tell you this, when you're sitting down to draft a judicial authorization, you're probably off the road for 2 or 3 or 4 hours at a time. And that's a conservative estimate. We've also had one fraud where we have it tied to a country on the other side of the world. And so we're now working with Interpol to see if we can try and identify the people in this specific country as well. And just of note, one of the frauds that we've done included 900 pages of disclosure. So these complaints and these investigations are getting more complicated all the time. Society expects law enforcement will approach addiction and mental health issues with compassion and understanding, leading to greater emphasis and time finding alternative solution to situations involving these factors. As the demands and complexities of policing grow, so does the need for additional training and the use of advanced technology to effectively manage these situations. The mental health and addictions is making up a significant part of our work. And what it once used to be in terms of just putting someone in cells and sobering them up and doing, we don't operate that way. And we're looking for solutions. We're trying to find places for people to stay. And that all involves time, and it involves investment by our members. In terms of the complexity, I'm sure everyone will recollect the shooting incident that happened in town here last fall, I guess it was. So again, a very complicated investigation, which was augmented by a lot of provincial resources, our emergency response teams, our dog people, our helicopters. I can tell you conservatively that day it would probably cost about $200,000 just in having all those resources come into the city. And but the city gets no bill for that. That's all part of the policing, provincial policing contract. And the increased workload. So there's been an increase in the criminal code files in Fort Saskatchewan over the past 5 years, and notable increases from 21 to 22. The most significant increase in criminal code occurrences was person crime. So those include assault, frauds, sexual assault, criminal harassment. And as you can see by the graphic there, persons crime increased 38% between 19 and 23, and property crime increased from about 13% between 19 and 23. And again, general investigations are typically subject matter experts in investigating person crimes. However, there are competing priorities because we sometimes have to use those resources to go to our frontline resources to augment our resources there. Property crime is reflected as a community priority. However, the crime reduction unit, and that's our T-Crew, traffic/crime reduction unit, is currently combined with traffic resources, and these all as well could result in competing unit priorities. What we're seeing now is a lot of traveling criminals coming out of the city, perpetrating their crime and going back. I'm not sure if anyone saw the media release. There was a business here in town that had about $140,000 in drones stolen, and all of our people working together were able to execute search warrants in the city of Edmonton and get back a large majority of that product and back to the business itself. And then just a week ago, I was actually just going to get lunch, and there was a vehicle running around town. And we ended up getting in behind it, stopping it in a crescent, and there was someone had stolen $3,000 worth of pools from the Canadian Tire. So we actually had the people stop before the complaint even came into us. So again, these people were from Red Deer, came up. I think we went a little bit further north on the way back to Red Deer, decided they'd come into town and perpetrate some crime. But our team caught him, so it was a good day that day. So these are our occurrences over a 5-year span, or 5-year span from 19 to 23. So you see a drop in 2020. Obviously, I think everyone knows what was happening in the world then. You see it kind of level off, and you're seeing an increase again moving forward. And so I did a quick little look at it here. So from January 1st to March 30th of this year, we've had 2016 calls for service or files created. Last year we had 2296. But if you look at that 2016 multiplied out by 4, we're going to be over 8,000 calls for service if those numbers hold true. So these are some municipal detachment comparators that we pulled. I think the one that I certainly before council have been questioned on before is the cop to pop ratio, or the police officer to citizen ratio. So if you look there in the fort, we're about 856. So one RCMP member to 856 citizens. As you can see, with the estimated growth that we have, we're going to get up to 935. If you look at the second line there, we have average detachments, so that's kind of the averages that were there. So our CSI, which is our criminal crime severity index, is at 84.6. So we're certainly higher than some of the other communities on this list. Again, I have to caution you, just doing a comparison straight across is not great, because there's so many other dynamics and factors that can make those things change. But I wanted to be upfront and show that kind of where we are. The one thing in Fort Saskatchewan, we do kind of still have this idea of no call is too small. So almost every call for service that comes in, there will be a police officer talking to the person. I can tell you in some jurisdictions, and certainly in some larger jurisdictions, that is not the case. So there is a service delivery comparable almost to none other here in town. One of the things that other people have asked is, well, okay, the positions that you have, we're not all quite there in terms of filling the new positions. I can tell you this, that the RCMP have taken recruiting on an initiative nationally. We never had to do that at one time. There was always people lined up to become RCMP members, but we're doing things across the province. We're doing things here in town. So I can tell you, in the midst of about in 2020, 2021, we had roughly about 1,600 applications across the country to join the Mounted Police. And we are looking through at putting about 1,200 people through in a year out through Depot. Currently, with all the work that's being done, we're up to 11,000, and that's where the number we need to have so that we can get enough people to come through Depot. And in this fiscal year, so 24-25, we're anticipating 40 troops of 32 people, which is a total of 1,280. Now, again, all those have to get through, but we're going to put 1,280 people into Depot, which is going to be able to give us some more ability to fill positions that are vacant. And I can tell you this, I just, before we came over, I talked to our human resource officer and saying, hey, listen, I'm going before council. They asked for another position. And he said, they will say that any new growth will get filled first. So if in 2025, if the decision comes through and we move forward, that'll be a priority to get that position filled. And in addition, I work constantly with our staffing people to fill other positions as well.
So moving on to just the financial implications of this ask, the current 2024 RCMP contract budget sits at just around $6.2 million with a per member rate of $216,000 per officer. We have budgeted for 29 working FTEs. So I'll explain a little bit about that strategy in a moment here. We are about to undergo the multi-year financial planning process with the RCMP. So a more refined costing of what needs to be added to our 25 RCMP contract budget will come forward in the fall, like our normal budget process. the last RCMP multi-year financial plan that we went through, they forecasted the per member rate in 2025 to be approximately $225,000 per officer. So that's likely what we'll be looking at adding in 2025. But as I've said, we'll bring more refined costing to the contract budget in the budget process. Council may remember this staffing chart from our last presentation, and it just talks about the budgeting strategy. So those lines in blue are our established positions. So currently, if we're going into the 24-25 fiscal year, you'll see there are 33 established positions. We've budgeted for 29. If this request is approved, we would then, for the 25-26 fiscal year, move up to 34 positions. And then Inspector LaRocque, through that multi-year financial plan process, will set that working FTE budgeted amount. This just helps us and allows us to get as close as we can to the actuals, because we know that vacancies are a reality in policing. And so we budget the established positions less that vacancy rate, which is a forecasted rate, to get us our RCMP contract budget. And we'll continue on with that process. Inspector LaRocque and I will be setting that multi-year financial plan in April and May, and that will come to for the mayor's signature as well in May. So administration is recommending that council request an increase to the established positions for the Fort Saskatchewan RCMP detachment by 1 additional RCMP officer in 25 and 1 RCMP officer in 2027. And then the next steps will be that I will prepare a letter that will go out from Mayor and Council to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services to fulfill that position. And hopefully by 2025, we will have that position in place in January 2025. So that concludes our presentation, and Inspector LaRocque and I are happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go to questions first. Councillor Harris.
Inspector LaRocque, what is the RCMP doing about your training program? You talked about depot and the number of people that you're having to bring in and run through that whole training program. Are there any initiatives to bolster that, change it, improve it, so that you can meet the demand across the country?
So that in Depot or in Regina, they're constantly evolving that program.
Okay.
It is one of the world's renowned programs. We have other police forces from across the globe come and look at it. So they're always tweaking the different things that we're doing and evolving the program. It's not so much the physical anymore. It's not about being the big, tough, burly. There's a lot more nuanced work that's done there with regards to working with mental health, working with people with addiction, being more trauma informed as we're doing interviewing and things like that. So there's always work being done at Depot Division. Once people get placed across Canada in their respective divisions or provinces, they are then come under in Alberta, we have a whole training thing where they'll go learn how to use roadside testers for screening for alcohol. They'll use carbines. They will have different training in terms of their mandatories. Plus, we have an online platform called Agora. So there's lots of training that is done through that medium as well with regards to trying to bring the level of our people up to what society is expecting.
So historical police training has evolved, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, it is evolved.
Okay.
I can tell you from 31 years ago to what again, I call them kids, but what the people are being trained to in Regina, it's a different style of policing. When I went through, and you might not see it with my size, but it was about physically managing people, and it's not that as much anymore. That's certainly part of it, but it's certainly not the focus anymore. So yes, we are certainly evolving.
So leading into my last question is, so you're asking for 2 positions to be added to our budget in the coming years. Would those people coming out of depot, would they come with unique skill sets or basic police skill sets that ultimately you evolve on the job, or is there anything unique about the type of candidates you're seeking to recruit into this particular posting?
Yeah, so I guess not necessarily would they be coming straight from depot to here in terms of their cadets. Once we get the position, we could be grabbing people from that have a 2 or 3 year post somewhere else and bringing those in. We are certainly getting people with more education coming through depot. We're getting older people coming through depot. When I did the job fair here in town a couple weeks ago, there was people in their mid-40s that were showing interest in joining the RCMP. So with that, they bring a ton of life experience that is actually a very welcome thing. So yes, we're getting more people coming to the RCMP with different life skills and or education that certainly play a part in their development as a police officer.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blizzard.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. Lots of information in there, really good information. I do have a couple of questions, and actually your clarification made me understand it less. So you said we have 33 positions, and if with this one we have 34, and I can't remember what number you budgeted, 29, it would go up to 30. So even if someone's off, first of all, do they not cost us if someone's on maternity leave? Isn't that part of the expense too, though? They still cost, or if someone's on sick, maybe not leave, but they're sick, there's still a cost there, right?
Your worship, through to Councillor Blizzard, you're correct. So after 30 days, if someone is off longer than 30 days, then we are no longer directly billed for that individual. And there is an indirect billing through the divisional administration costs, but after 30 days, we no longer pay the full wage of that individual. So that is why we budget. So we have 33 positions, but we'll budget accordingly to what our history of vacancies is and what Inspector LaRocque and I set that budgeted amount based on what we're forecasting for transfers, relocations, and if anyone is off on long-term sickness, then the RCMP doesn't backfill that position. So then we have that surplus basically where we're not being billed for those officers.
Okay, so it gets paid from somewhere else, central, is that?
That's correct. It's
Okay.
paid through the RCMP, then it goes on to the federal,
Okay.
yeah, provincial, yeah.
Okay, so that explains the cost side of it, but even for the vacancy, and I guess especially the boots on the ground, the people patrolling, do you just leave it empty? I mean, I was a former shift worker. If I wasn't there because I was sick, short-term, long-term, maternity, whatever it was, somebody had to be there. Does it not get filled, or do you go, well, we just have less cars, then too bad?
Your worship, through to Councillor Blizzard, so the RCMP does not backfill those positions. So when someone goes off on a long-term sickness, they don't give us another officer. So that's where Inspector LaRocque will manage within the resources that he has. He will utilize overtime in some cases, and then he will also utilize those specialized units that we have to help augment that frontline policing, because he does have to have certain people in the chair. So that's how he mitigates within our detachment level, and I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add to that.
And so because of the historical vacancies, and we budget for that 29, it's so that there's no large surplus at the end of the year. And I know this past year we started to rise because we were getting people back. So that 33 that we had, all of a sudden we started creeping up a little bit to that 29 and then 30. And then I think for a couple months we were at about 31. Well, then, of course, as I said, vacancies are a part of policing. That dropped down. So at the end of the year, we'll probably come right in around that 29, 29.3. So the money will be, so the city's not then sitting with a large vacancy. Do we run the risk of a deficit sometime? Yes, we do. But I think Karine and I have enough discussion back and forth that we can manage that as well. And if we get running hot, it's where then we can certainly do things to make sure that the money side of it is we're not having a big deficit or a big deficit at the end of the year. So there's many ways for us to work with that throughout the year.
Okay, yeah, I'd rather see a surplus than a deficit. I have one more, but I can wait or finish it
Well,
quick.
Councillor Harris took 3, so.
Alrighty, well, just a quick one. So for the 2027 position, and this could be for our admin too, I think you worded it as in, I don't even know how you said it, in kind. It wasn't in kind. What did you say?
An agreement in principle.
In principle, that's what it was. So, because we may not be here. That's next council. So if we approve that, I guess looking to the city manager, that gets kind of penciled in. Is that it? And then council still would have to approve?
Through your worship, yeah, council still does have to approve the funding and the overall amount for the officers. So if there was, for some reason, the next council didn't agree with this, we could work to reduce our officer count as well. It might not be something you would do overnight, but I'm sure we could make those adjustments back down. Primarily, this request is about getting it in the queue early because of the lag that it takes for an officer to show up from the point when you ask for it. We want to get in now before things ramp up with Dow and whatnot. So, but again, if the next council came in and say they didn't agree with that second one there, adjustments could be made back to go back down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Inspector LaRocque, I'd like to talk a bit about the vacancies as well. I think I understand the concept of soft vacancy. Could you give me a bit more color on what you mean by hard vacancy?
Sure. The hard vacancy is a position that does not have a body attached to it, but is sitting empty awaiting to have someone put into it or transferred into it. So there's no body in it, so they're not off. So that position, there's funding for it, but there's no funding being expended at that point because it's an empty spot. So that.
Okay, thank you. Would it be? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
So that then goes back to the conversation we had with Councilor Blizzard in terms of that difference between 29 and what is now 33. Is there's some of those are hard vacancies. There's a couple of those that are hard vacancies that we're not looking at filling right now so that we can stay in around that 29 mark.
Okay, when I as a councillor think about our RCMP presence, I always have a mental image of 33 because I know that's what we've approved. And yet what I'm hearing is that council's approved 33. Administratively speaking, you tend to try to run at 29. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, but a lot of those are, in addition to the couple hard vacancies, those are soft vacancies. So again, if I start getting every one of our people back, right, the back gets fixed, the knee is fixed, those things, then I will slowly creep up to that 33 number or at the 31 number because we have those two positions that are sitting kind of hard vacancies right now.
Okay. I don't mean this to come across badly, but it seems to me that it's a little bit of a shell game here. So if between the two of you, if you had in a perfect world, how many people would you like to have on active duty in the office on a daily basis to run an effective RCMP force within Fort Saskatchewan? So that's people in the seats or on the ground daily to run an effective force. Is that number 29? Is that 33? Or would that number be different?
So I think effective, I can run it at 29. In terms of running and getting a bunch of proactive and extra work done, I'd have 33. That's the number that we've decided upon. Again, if I could fill 33 positions today, I'd fill 33 positions to serve the people of Fort Saskatchewan.
If Your Worship, if I can just jump in to help clarify for Councillor Kelly. Essentially, yes, we have 33 established positions, and it would be great if we filled all those positions. But the reality is we typically have about 4.5 to 5 FTEs per year, and that's where you're seeing that 29. So that's just how we're budgeting. And then Inspector LaRocque and I manage that to make sure that we aren't going over our budget. So we would manage as those vacancies come open or if people come back, it ebbs and flows, and we just manage those vacancies so that we're not over our budget. But typically, yes, if we had 33 officers in place, that would be great, effective, and proactive policing in Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you for the responses. Mayor Ketch, I want to come back to this line of questioning, so put me on for a second rotation, please.
Okay. I'm next in the speaking order. So the question that I want to just come back to is when you talk about citizen to officer ratio. So when they're doing these comparisons, would it be fair to say that they don't take into shadow populations that occur because of, like turnarounds, ramp ups, new industry projects, things like that?
That's correct, Mayor. It is based solely upon the population, the census population of the community when they do it, and any add-ins in terms of the shadow population or those aren't taken into that. Into those numbers. Again, I'm hearing that there will be 7,000 workers on these sites on any given day. Well, that number hasn't jumped into that formula to give that cop to pop ratio.
Okay, and then my next question comes, and I asked this at the town hall meeting, about the plan that you have for all of the shadow population and growth coming. So this talks to the plan, a bit of the plan, but I guess my question is it aggressive enough ask based on what we anticipate is going to be going on in this community? Loaded question.
So going back to Councillor Kelly's question, can I run an effective policing at 29? I can run an effective policing at 29. But if I had 33 bodies to put into all the positions that have been paid for, I would certainly like to do that. If council thought that they wanted to raise the ask, I would be nuts to say I wouldn't take any more. But in consultation with Karine, we came with a very pragmatic look at how many people we probably need. And as the town manager said, it's a matter of getting them in the cycle, right? So getting that one going, because it could take 9 months to a year to get a body in the seat. So is it aggressive enough? I think I'll leave that to the councillors to decide.
Should be a politician. Okay, and the third question that I'll ask, since everybody's kind of asking three, you talked about the judicial system and the impact that it's having on your officers. So when you talk about the numbers or the statistics, how many of those are a result of catch and release and then having to recatch again? Do you have any idea?
I only have anecdotal information because we are dealing with the same people that we arrest. They're released by the courts and then they're caught committing crime again. So there is an element of that whole, if people were kept in custody, then we wouldn't have to necessarily be dealing with them again. And I go back to about a year ago where we had someone stealing catalytic converters, and finally, after I believe is the fourth time, this person was kept in custody. And but each time this person was released, we then caught this person stealing more catalytic converters.
All right, thank you. Councillor Nguyen, you're next.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation this afternoon. Good to see you both. I guess follow up with Councillor Kelly's line of questioning then. Would this statement that you operate with a surplus every year because of the hard vacancies that exist, is that correct if I say that, or no?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Noyan, we have had surpluses in our RCMP contract budget over the years, and except last year. Last year was the one year where we came to Council to say we do need to increase our budget due to inflation costs, pay raises, and this budget strategy is to help us to get as closest to those actuals as we can by budgeting at a lower rate of working FTEs. So over the several years, we have had lots of RCMP contract surpluses. That's correct.
Okay, and then what do you do with that surplus?
That surplus will go into the general reserves. I think I'll let maybe Mr. Fleming answer that.
Yeah, through your worship, it gets treated with the rest of the city's deficit or surplus, and it would follow the city's budget policy and get allocated into different reserves.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That answers my question perfectly. And third question. Just want to be part of the group.
This is the only one we're going to do three on it.
Do you have an idea of how much was spent perhaps last year? It can be ballpark on backfilling positions, so overtime pay and the other factors that we spoke of. Just trying to gauge kind of.
So when I think we'll use this fiscal year. So we're just coming up to the end of the fiscal year. We had budgeted $250,000 for overtime, and I think we're going to probably come in at about $225 to $230. In terms of overtime. Now that is to help backfill positions. That is also to do criminal investigations as well. So it's all kind of ballparked. I think this year we're going to set up a different financial mechanism by which we do track how much is costing us to backfill positions when we're empty, so that I can come back to council in a year and say, okay, you know what, out of that $250,000 that we budgeted for, $162,500, it was done to that, and the rest was done for criminal investigations.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks. So then we effectively be replacing the overtime costs with a FTE then.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks.
Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Reyna and Inspector Larocque. My first question actually is to Mr. Fleming. So we do have a hiring policy that we budget 3/4 of the actual required amounts in that budget year. So they're requesting for $225,000. So is that because I think your intention is to get the person hired by January? So how are we going to deal with that part?
Through your worship, that policy doesn't apply to RCMP officers because they're not actually city staffed positions. This is theoretically a contracted cost.
Okay.
So how we would budget for the position sort of depends on the timing of the ask, and based on where we are right now in March, you're right, the goal would be to get them in January, and we would actually budget for the full cost. But the other thing we want to do is we want to be, we're also asking early in the year, but as this year goes along and we get our T1 report and our T2 report, we'll have a better sense for where the RCMP's budget is. And we may not need to request the full amount of this position if we see that we're running a surplus. But that's something we can kind of track as the year goes along. And then by the time the budget comes this fall, we'll have a better idea as to what the appropriate request amount should be.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And my second question is regarding having attended the RCMP town hall, and I remember hearing numbers like an increase of 43% for youth-related occurrences. And so my question is, will this position be able to deal with issues like that? Is this like a general duties position?
Yeah, so this position would be a general duty officer that would be taking whatever calls for service would come in. With the youth in the community, they would certainly help with that as the calls would come in. If it was a youth-related call or a youth-related act, then yes, they would be helping with that as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
You're good? Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you. Back to the vacancy question for a little bit. Is it possible that there's, and there must be somebody within the force that has ultimate authority over where the assignments go? Is it possible that Fort Saskatchewan sees a higher hard vacancy rate just because we're perceived as not needing the officers as badly as another detachment within the province or within Western Canada?
There certainly is a matrix, I guess, for lack of a better term, in terms of where positions go, especially out of depot. What we're finding right now is that we're sending a lot of people up into eastern and western Alberta because the need is there as well. There is, I don't think a thought. I go and tell our district management that we have a safe community. I haven't really gone to them and saying, hey, listen, make us a priority to fill all these positions. But I certainly could do that and try and drive that to fill it. It's a very complicated situation. But if council and mayor and council come back and say, hey, listen, we'd like to fill all these positions, right? I think then it would be up to Karine to talk to city management about ensuring that we have the funding. And then I go and beat the drum to say, we want to fill all these positions.
Thank you. I think that's a very honest and comprehensive answer. I would agree there's got to be some sort of algorithm or judgment call as to filling high priority spaces first. It only makes sense. And Karine, I wasn't questioning at all the ability of yourself to budget. I think you do a great job. It's just, if the council thinks that we have 33 positions, I honestly believe we should be attempting to fill 33. I've heard, so what's stopping us from asking for 2 or 3 right now? And I get the budget thing, and we can talk about that once the motion is made, but is there anything stopping us for asking for more positions right now so that we can, I guess, work this game the way we have to get the boots on the ground that we feel we need?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Kelly, I think the thing that we're missing here is the soft vacancy rate, which we do not have a control over. So the tendency with detachments across the board and my counterparts is to have a surplus to establishment, essentially, to help us with those soft vacancies. The hard vacancies are filled on a fairly faster rate, but sometimes when we have soft vacancies where we have no control over those officers and how long they're going to be off on medical leave, those are the ones that we find that it's difficult to manage that, because ultimately Inspector Larocque has no control over that. So that is why we ask for 33 positions, so that we can have that surplus, so that we can manage, and that Inspector Larocque is able to provide effective policing. So that is where that comes from, and that's something that the RCMP and Inspector Larocque just doesn't have the control over, those types of vacancies.
Mr. Fleming, do you have a response?
Yeah, through your worship, I just maybe to directly answer a part of the question there too. There's nothing stopping us from asking for more positions right now, and this will be a difficult thing for me to describe, and I'm going to weigh into areas that I'm not a deep expert in, so I'd encourage Mr. Larocque to speak up if I get something wrong here. But policing is quite like all of the other municipalities' services, and that it is a level of service that you're essentially choosing through how you resource it. So in my previous discussions leading up to this with Inspector Larocque and Ms. Rayner, like 29 is kind of the number that I would describe as being we get by with that. That gives us basic level policing with no proactive police work involved. That's what we need to maintain what a reasonable person would describe as a basic level of service. And I would say this request is about getting us to kind of 30 and 31 so we can maintain that basic level of service as changes are happening around us with shadow population and population growth. But, the point that you're making is a good one. We could, if we really wanted to have a deeper dive into level of service and go, well, let's get up to the 33. And then it would be on Inspector Larocque to tell us what the benefits are of that. And we would have to decide if the benefits are worth the cost. We didn't choose to sort of go down that conversation in this particular instance. This was more of a, getting the resources to maintain our existing service level. But certainly it's something we could do. We could start having more conversations about different service levels at different resource levels.
Thank you, Mayor Katcher. I'm going to venture out for a third with your permission. If 29 is deemed to be sort of the sweet spot, how many days in calendar 23 did our detachment operate with a minimum of 29 people showing up for work?
So, Councillor Kelly, I don't know that number because I get spreadsheets that are provided to me that shows the different ebbs and flows. I can tell you that at one point in 23, we were up to, I think, 31.4 positions, or 31.4 FTE positions. And I think at the low, there might have been 1 month we were down to about 26 point something. So if you start looking at those averages, I would say we were pretty close to 29 for most of the calendar year. And we can find those specific numbers if you would like to see those.
Thank you. That response makes me feel a little better. We'll continue this in debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blissard.
Just one, that chart that you had up. So your fiscal year must run mid-year, right? April to April. So if you look at that chart here, if you look at the very last year, so you're asking for officers in 25, so that would be the second last one, right? 25, 26. But then you said not till 27, but that makes it look like it's 26, 27. So are you asking for one back-to-back each year? I thought it was, the next one was 2 years later.
Well, we're asking for one in 25 for 25. So we got to get the process started. So we have one coming by say January 1st, 25, right? And then the 26 to 27, we probably wouldn't be asking for that next one to start until 27. So January of 27.
27. Okay, I guess that's why it's in the calendar year then.
Yeah, the old calendar year versus fiscal year. It's
okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to come back to this again. So just put up your chart again. So just so that we're all clear, you have money in the budget for 29 people.
Your Worship, that is correct.
And then you make up the balance from the vacancies that allows you to have the 33 as numbers, because you don't have actual money in for those other 5.
Your Worship, that is correct. So we essentially have the 33 established positions and budgeted for 29 based on the RCMP's financial forecast. Yes.
Okay, I understand that. My biggest concern is that people are thinking we have the money in there for 33 people and we don't. We only have it for 29. That's what you're telling us.
That is correct.
Okay, so then my next question comes to, other than close to the previous year, you indicated that there had been a surplus in the salaries. What kind of surplus were we talking about?
Through to your worship, we have had $200,000 to $400,000 surpluses over several years in the past over our vacancy rates.
Mr. Fleming?
Yeah, there was, this is going back a ways, but there was a time, I'm trying to think of when we did it. You were around for it, but there was the year the city turned in the $5 million operating surplus. And we all made there was a strategic decision made that the city, that was excessive. And we had to go after, and I guess more precisely budget, and figure out where these surpluses were coming from and address them. And one of the major sources of the surplus for the city back then was the RCMP contract, because we were budgeting for all of the officers and we were getting soft and hard vacancies. And every year, I think it was 1 year, the RCMP actually turned in $1 million surplus just from that one staffing area. I think that was the year of the $5 million operating surplus for the city. And so that's when we started to have the strategy. I think at the time we called it boots over establishment. We're doing it a little bit differently now because that wasn't working so well either. It was still turning in surpluses. So now what we try to do is budget to our actuals. There's what we ask for, but we try to budget to our actuals. But we're not afraid to run a deficit if we're able to get more officers in a given year like we did last year, where we did run a bit of a deficit. So that's why you see that spread is sort of the difference between what we've asked for and what we're actually getting for boots on the ground.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. I've been following this for 14 years now.
Me too. Well,
that's how we got surplus to establishment. But so I guess really the question that I have is, even if we're doing a really good job, not me, you guys, you are doing a really good job and we're still having surpluses, is it not worth our risk to say that we should be hiring the additional people now, rather than waiting like 2 years or 3 years? I'm going to ask this question to Mr. Fleming. So what's the biggest risk we have other than, so you tell me what the biggest risk is if we were to say, well, we should do this sooner than later.
So just for clarity, with this first position that we're asking for, we are doing it now. The ask will go in immediately, but it will take 9 months to a year to actually get the body. So for this first one, we're doing it right away. If we want to ask for 2 right away, we certainly can do that, and we got a better chance of getting the position in. They would come in early. But just to be clear, as of last year, we didn't have a surplus. The RCMP contract was under, and council actually topped up the budget for 2024. I don't know what 2024 is going to look like yet because we're still too early in the year. But we can assess that throughout the year and see how it goes for when the actual budget ask comes in this fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good. Thanks. All right. That looks like all of the questions. Councillor Batoye?
Sorry, just a thought that just quickly came to my head as you made that last comment. What is the source of funding? What would be the source of funding for this ask?
Through your worship, property taxes.
Property taxes. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. There's your council. Councillor Macon.
I'd be prepared to make the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make the motion that council direct administration to request an increase to the established positions of the Fort Saskatchewan RCMP detachment by 1 additional RCMP officer in 2025 and 1 RCMP officer in 2027.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I will. I've really enjoyed my time on the policing committee the past year and a half. We have protective services in our family, and so I really enjoy listening to the ins and outs and the updates that we get. And definitely what has been a theme is increased calls for service and the complexity of those calls for service. And so I think for me, we can be very excited about our industrial partner coming in and making this big investment, but it's also our duty to keep the community safe by ensuring that we're increasing those service levels accordingly. I think that even if we didn't have the projected growth that we do with the announcement, I think we already have the need for these increased boots on the ground. So I'm in full support of this, and I'll await further comments.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now open for discussion and debate. Councillor Blizzard.
Yes, I'll support this motion. I think it's a reasonable request, and the spacing is good. We're not throwing in a ton of new positions all at once, but it's a good thing. Crime is up. I see it in different reports. I see it on Facebook. I see it in newspapers. I hear people complaining more about different things going on from different scams. And I think a good thing to strive for is a low, what do you call it, cop to pop number. You know, if we have a lower number, higher police numbers per population, I think that is a good thing. So I'll support this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I'll support the motion as well, without reservation, actually. But I'd like to, and this is probably directed toward Mr. Fleming and perhaps Corinne as well. Would it be possible to ask administration to prepare a little detail for our budget this fall on the percentage of vacancies for at least the first 9 months of 24? Every time I see these stats, and I know I asked this question the last time Inspector was in front of us, but when I see the stats with the vacancies, we are running, my recollection is, and it's reaffirmed yet again today, that the vacancies are about 25%. Now, I don't doubt Councillor Rock on it tells us that at some point in last year we hit 100%, but it's, I think it's better from a policing perspective. And I don't think anybody on council doubts the value of a strong police force in the community. So let's take that as a given. I think it's better to once in a while run over budget as opposed to habitually running under budget. So I don't think we need to make that decision today. I don't think we have the data in front of us to make it today. But would it be possible, Mr. Fleming or Corinne, to have a deeper dive into this question coming budget season this fall?
Mr. Fleming.
To your worship, subject to a conversation I have with the folks at the presenters table, I'd say yes, it's definitely possible, and we can include it with the plan request that goes forward for the budget for 25.
With perhaps more detail, if possible, Mr. Fleming, so that council can be informed on what our vacancy rates actually are on a more or less a real-time basis, so that we get a true picture of boots on the ground.
Yeah, through your worship, I think we can do that. It is a number. I think it just some commentary. It's shockingly, for me, I found it to be shockingly unstable. Like you can be up at 31 and down at 22, and it can happen within a matter of months. And so, yeah, we'll do our best to paint that picture for council.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have an additional question for you. So just hypothetically, if there was a motion to change the numbers and it happened to pass and it was to say, well, maybe let's look at 2 for 2025, but then the 2025 budget starts taking place and then council decides to maybe push it to 2026 or something, you're not required to take the second one, are you?
No, we're not. It's again, I will play with the budget as it's set out. So if you want to put 2 forward now, what I can tell you in talking to our human resources officer was anything put forward new, they will try and fill those positions. But I believe there is enough room in our soft vacancies and our hard vacancies that we could make that work.
Okay, So I'm going to put an amending motion on. I'll give you the chair, deputy mayor, after I've put the motion on. I still have to work the buttons, so I'm going to put an amending motion on that 2 additional officers be requested in 2025, and we'll leave the 2027 at this point in time. So just make that change, and then we can discuss the merits of 2 for 2025 based on that. So you and I are going to both be live.
Well, I accept your amending motion. Would you like to speak in favor of it?
Yes, I would. My feelings are, you know, when I listened at the town hall, and I had real concerns about the fact that we are going to have such a boom or a bust in shadow population, that I understand that you said, yeah, you've got a plan going forward, but this is going to happen sooner than 2027, and I have real concerns with that the plan is okay, but I don't think it's aggressive enough, because as you ask officers to continue to take on more overtime, they become worn out, and then they take more time off. And I also have officer in the family, and I understand what the consequences are. And I believe that if we were fortunate enough to get 2 additional ones in 25, we would be very lucky to have that. And I still believe that even with the surpluses that we experience with vacancies and that, I still believe we could manage it. So I would like to put that to a test.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Blizzard.
I'm not going to support that motion. I had thought of, already when the conversation was going that way that I'm going to trust that you guys have looked into it. It sounds like you already know that we run short, so you ask for X positions knowing we're going to be at this, and those are reasonable requests. So I'm going to trust that what you're asking is gonna work for our city. I also think one of the things that was mentioned was, well, okay, if we approve 2 for 2025 already now, but then we can backtrack. Well, you can't backtrack if we're putting it in the process and trying to get officers. Like if we approve it now, that's it. You can't backtrack again. So to me, that's not it shouldn't even be brought up, because we're approving it now as if this is budget time in November. So I won't support this amending motion, because I'm going to trust that you are requesting what you feel is best.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I sympathize and understand the point I believe that Mayor Katcher is trying to make, and I sympathize with the motion. But like Councillor Blizzard, I will not support it. My last line of questioning, administration said they would be prepared to bring additional information back for the fall for our budget process to allow council perhaps a deeper dive into the question. And I think also this preps Corrine and the inspector to go back and have further discussions between the two of themselves and look at the detachment a bit, maybe with different eyeballs, and bring back perhaps a unique or a different perspective, or confirm their own opinion as of today when budget comes around next fall. So I think we're good right now. I look forward to the discussion this fall. I value, and I know everybody in Fort Saskatchewan values deeply, it's fundamental, a safe community, and as a councillor, I'm prepared to fund it. I just need to know how we have to do it and what it is we need, and that's the discussion that I think we're going to have this fall. So right now, sorry, I won't support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, maybe just a question for our inspector. If this motion passed, would it change the position, the specific the target positions like traffic or crimes unit that these bodies would fill if you had to in January 1st, based on our shadow population surplus and or the demand outside of that you see right now?
Any extra police officers are good police officers, right? and we certainly could put them to work to do some more proactive stuff. I go back to the councillor's points about the youth, right? We're doing the base work. We do the base work well, but maybe we could have more people working with the youth in some of those proactive things. But to your point is, could we use them? Yeah, I would put them to use, and certainly. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks very much. I'm not quite sure the way I'm going to vote on this yet, but I'll hear from everyone else.
Thank you. Councillor Abatoye?
Thank you. So you talk about how difficult it could be to fill up those positions. So if you approached them for 2 officers, how likely are you to get those 2 officers?
Very likely, because those positions would be filled first. Any new growth positions are the ones that the RCMP are filling first.
Okay, thank you. So why did you request for 2? Why did you ask for 1?
Came in with a very conservative ask.
Okay.
Right. We know the pressures that are in the city. So yeah, it was.
So you're like, I mean, let me just ask for 1 because they might not even approve the 1, and now you're getting 2. Okay. Well,
yeah, if I could say 10, I'd take 10.
I know.
But it was in consultation with Karine and I, and we thought coming in with a very, again, pragmatic view on it. But to Mayor Katcher's points, there is going to be pressures on the city and the policing for the next 3 years, certainly.
Okay, thank you. I see what Mayor Katcher is trying to do here. But I believe you came to council based on some assessment that you already did, about the needs that the needs we have in our community, and I believe that it's really a balance about available resources versus all the pressing needs in our community. And I agree that policing is so important. It's important for us to keep our communities safe. But I think that getting that 1 person next year is good. And if maybe you see there is a need, you can come back in 26, right, rather than wait for another couple years. So I think that I want to support this motion, and I'll just leave it at that and approve the 1, and then see what the trends are like, see what the numbers are like, see how the crime rates, whether it goes up or goes down, and then make a decision from there. But for now, I think I'll just support the 1 just because of available resources, right? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump in next. I'll support the amendment. What I heard through the presentation today is that we're filling a basic need, and I do believe in the positive outcome that comes from proactive police work. And so if we can add 2 officers and actually have more proactive work being done, I think that would be amazing for this community, and I think the detachment would probably operate better for it. So I will support this amendment, and I don't see anybody else in the queue to speak, so I'll go to you to close, Mayor Katcher.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. I'm kind of the belief if you don't ask, you can't get. And while I understand that, you've probably been given the direction to come in with a modest request, my concern still comes to officer health, wellness, but it also comes to the fact that this community, as I talked to somebody last night, I said it feels like our community is just percolating right now. It's just getting excited about all of this that's going to happen with the new housing that's coming on, and the new industry that's coming on, and then all of a sudden it's going to come to a boil. And for me, it was like, okay, that's going to happen earlier than 2025. And that's why I asked you the question at the town hall. Are we sincerely planned for that? And I know you said you're doing the best you can with what you have. And that's why I want to put this motion on, because I honestly believe that we are going to see such a change in our community over the next 2-3 years. And I don't believe we can wait Because if you're waiting for officers to come, you're not able to deal with what's going on. And if you're asking these officers to work so much extra overtime, they burn out. And then you're going to have a heck of a lot more surplus. So then we definitely could afford to have more sitting there. So I am going to ask once again that you know, I know some members of council have made their minds up, but to really take that into consideration and think about this, and I will close with that. But I'm just going to say, at the town hall and today, you had me at the point where you talked about how proactive you are and how you are breaking these cases. And I just say, wow, if you actually had the manpower that you needed, how much more you could do. So I'm just saying thank you and kudos on what you do.
Thank you. I will close the motion to request an increase to the established positions by 2. Please cast your vote.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go back to the main motion. All right, which was put on by Councillor Macon. It's still open for discussion and debate. Pardon? Well, I have to see if anybody had anything else. Okay. So not seeing anything else, I will close the, oh, do you have anything on close? Sorry.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, the motion is now closed as presented. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. All right, thank you very much. I think that's all that was on yours. Okay. All right, are there any notice of motions? Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get us out of here. It's 3:30. Does anybody need a 5-minute break? All right, so let's, and we never do 5 minutes, so let's come back at 3:40. Be 9 minutes. We'll recess. Okay, we will resume the meeting. It is 3:40, and that's what I asked everybody to be back for. So our next item is bylaw C324, amending land use bylaw C2320. Cherie Shindy presenting. Welcome, Cherie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Shri Shinde. I'm the manager of current and long-range planning with the city, and I'm here to present bylaw C324, land use bylaw amendment. The applicant has applied for a text amendment to the land use bylaw by amending the Agriculture General South District, the AGS district. The subject site is a 6.7 hectare, that is 17 acres parcel, which is located west of Range Road 224, south of the city's material handling site, and east of the Ross Creek, as shown on this figure. The parcel is a part of the lands that were annexed in 2020 and is zoned as AGS, Agriculture General South. There is an existing structure and a yard in the northwest portion of the site. Currently, the site is not serviced with municipal water and sewer. The proposed amendment is to enable the development of a church on the subject site. The applicant is proposing to add a place of worship as a discretionary use within the district. Furthermore, the applicant is proposing to add a fundamental use provision so that the use will only be allowed on the subject site within the Agriculture South District. The purpose of the Agriculture General South District is to allow for compatible agriculture uses while maintaining the large parcel sizes. The subject site falls within the future urban areas designation under the city's municipal development plan, which is a holding district for unplanned lands that are rural and agricultural in nature. The comprehensive planning has not yet been undertaken for this area. There is neither area structure plan or a neighborhood structure plan that exists for this site. An ASP gives direction to the land uses, transportation network, and servicing in the plan area. It ensures that area will be developed to achieve compatible and complementary land use pattern and cost-effective, efficient servicing. Footprints rarely change once developed, so any future plans would have to work around what is built now. Allowing development without a comprehensive plan could negatively impact developability of the surrounding areas, fragment agricultural land, and increase the cost of future infrastructure development. For these reasons, among others, administration does not support the application. Although administration is not supportive of the application, we recommend council proceeds with first reading to enable the public hearing. The recommended motion for council's consideration is included in council's agenda package and is shown on this slide here. Should council give first reading to the bylaw C324, a public hearing will be advertised in the Fort Saskatchewan Record and through the city's social media accounts. A copy of the proposed bylaw will be available on the city's website. Adjacent landowners will be mailed a notice of public hearing, and the target date for the public hearing is April 23, 2024. And with that, I would like to answer any questions you may have for the administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll deal with questions. Councillor Harris.
Ms. Shindy, so the proponent is proposing to build one church building, and you're suggesting that if it were to go ahead, it would happen on the currently disturbed portion of that 17-acre parcel. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so just one building is what they're proposing, and there are no services in that area, so they would have to deal with it through some sort of novel servicing concept. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, we know they're proposing church. We don't know whether it's single building or they have any accessory building associated with it. But yes, there will not be municipal servicing. It will have to be dealt with on-site servicing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm next in order. So Okay, sitting on the EMRB, everything has to have an ASP. So how I have to ask, how could the city actually allow a development that isn't contained within an ASP?
To your worship, that is correct. And our MDP policies also require an area structure plan to be developed before any development happens in the urban future area. So our policies do not support that.
Okay, so question 2, so an ASP would have to be developed. Okay, what's the likelihood of it actually getting approved at the EMRB, given that it doesn't fit within, I believe would fit within the ref criteria?
Through your worship, I'll have to check the ref criteria, but we should be able to do the area structure plans within our annexed areas. And as long as it fits within, the area structure plan can be approved. Unserviced development, I'm not sure. But if the area structure plan is for the service development, that could be approved at the EMRB.
Okay, and just if everyone will indulge me, isn't this out of order? Because shouldn't it be ASP first and then land use?
To your worship, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were asking about whether the area structure plan can be accepted or approved by the EMRB.
Well, that was the second one, but I'm just asking about the order because we're always told it's MDP, ASP, LUB.
So yes, we would have to do an ASP first, and then this development needs to follow the area structure plan.
But the question is, isn't it out of order? Like you have to do the ASP before they can bring the LUB in.
Your worship, yes, I would agree with your assessment. Typically, there's an MDP followed by ASP, then a neighborhood structure plan, then a redistricting. The landowner is the owner of the application. They can always bring forward something. Administration's position may differ from what the applicant wants, and then council ultimately has the final decision, but we will always enable the ask.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, so further to this line of questioning then, when was an ASP going to be created for this area?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, the applicant could initiate the ASP. However, that is a very complex, time-intensive, cost-intensive process, but they could initiate the ASP. They will have to come to council and get the approval for the initiation of the area structure.
Right, and so where would the area structure plan cover geographically? Because we have Clover Park next door, and then our materials handling site, I think the jail's across the road. So how large of an ASP are we looking at? Because below that is Southford, is it not?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, so this ASP would have to be area south of Clover Park, west of the creek.
So it's really just this small parcel then?
And the parcel, the remaining part of the quarter section as well.
Right, okay.
Your worship, to elaborate on Ms. Shindy, that is correct. A ASP has to be a minimum of 1 quarter section. So where the boundaries would be determined by the applicant.
And we have a quarter section in this area that can be made into an ASP then, is what you're saying? I thought a quarter section would overlap another ASP then.
Yeah, it would depend on the preference of the applicant as to where the 160 acres would be included.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to round 2. Councillor Harris.
So, picking up on that.
Just a second. Yep, you're live.
So picking up on that line of question, so then the applicant would then have to include their land within an ASP plus, and if you can put that picture of the area, and then the portion looks quite gray, and it's got AGS on it. So then the owner of that property would have to get pulled into the development of an ASP, correct? And would that landowner then have to be a willing participant in the development of an ASP to ultimately see an ASP in place on the portion that we're talking about here, which is 16.6 acres? Just talk to us about that. We need to understand.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, we'll definitely have to have a conversation with the landowner. They don't have to be a participating landowner, but you keep them notified, informed, consulted through the process. So for example, the city can do an area structure plan for any lands within the city as well. So sometimes there are some participating landowners, and sometimes some landowners choose not to participate.
Yeah, I understand the process. So in other words, if the applicant here wanted to actually physically come forward and create an ASP that would identify other uses potentially in that 16 acres, because I don't think you need 16 acres for a church. Maybe you do, I don't know. I've never developed a church. But the balance of that property below, ultimately, then they could develop a plan for development outside of their boundaries of their ownership that would possibly not be supported by the property owner to the south. I'm just trying to frame that so we understand that, because ultimately then it's external third parties having a conversation about development in that area of our community that we ultimately then have to follow appropriate due process in terms of planning regime approval.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, that's a possibility that the landowner may not like what's being proposed. However, the decision is council's decision whether they want to approve that ASP or not.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking at figure 1 in the council package. I think that was the picture that you just had up for Councillor Harris. And I'm still trying to understand it. Those comments around the 160 acres sort of minimum. If I look at figure 1, then the entire, it looks to me like the creek runs diagonally from the southeast corner to the northwest corner of that particular quarter section. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, yes, that's correct.
And the balance of the quarter section, taking out this particular piece of land, is owned by one owner, or are there multiple owners for the balance of the quarter section? Do we even know that?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, could you repeat your question, please?
Okay, the balance of the quarter section, ignoring the parcel in question, the balance of the quarter section, how many owners are entitled for that remaining property, the remaining balance of the 160 acres?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, it's only one owner.
Okay, thank you. And it's obvious that directly west of this subject property is a provincial jail. So is there any land owned by the city, not owned by the city, wrong word, that was subject to the annexation by the city of Fort Saskatchewan that lies further east, directly east of this particular quarter?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, to the east of the jail lands?
No, east of the jail lands is a quarter section that includes the subject property.
Yes.
East of that particular subject property quarter section, 1.5 mile east, is that part of the city of Fort Saskatchewan now, or is that still part of the county of Strathcona?
through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I believe that's a part of City of Port Saskatchewan. I'm slightly confused now.
Janelle?
Through your worship, no, the municipal boundary is along the quarter section that we're discussing.
Okay, and that, I think, sort of makes it clear to me that development plans are to be efficient and effective need to accommodate a large enough area to make sense of a development. And the only, I'll leave it at that. I look forward to second reading, and we can have a more wholesome discussion around the concept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Shindy. So on your request for decision, it says that the Planning and Development Department remains open to engage in further discussion with the applicants. And it goes further to talk about that the city is open to working with them on developing on disturbed or developed land. Can you elaborate further on your rationale for supporting that development in that area?
To your worship to Councillor Abatoye. So as we mentioned in the report, we have policies regarding not developing in the annexed area or in the urban future area without doing an area structure plan, because you want to achieve efficient servicing, you want to achieve compatible land uses, and just achieve the highest and best use for the lands. And bigger the lands, better planning and more efficiencies you can achieve. So the reasoning here would be, and Ms. Janelle could add to my answer as well, to maintain the rest of the area, which is agriculture area, it could remain in agriculture until it's required for the urban development. We are an urban municipality, so we should do more of an urban development. And the disturbed area, if you do the development on that one, we can consider it as a redevelopment. You are not taking more area out of agriculture, more area for unserviced development, and you keep the most of the area on this site available for the future urban development. So that was the reasoning, to keep it where the development already exists and do not take more area for unserviced rural use than that's required at this point in time.
Okay, so I guess the biggest issue that I've heard in the conversations that we had so far is the need for an ASP. So if they're going to develop in the disturbed or developed area, do they still require to do an ASP?
In that case, we will be looking at it as a redevelopment of the existing area, existing site. And because you are not taking any more area, you are not developing on undeveloped, unplanned area, I think we would be okay with that.
So you'll support that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
So a couple of questions. So first of all, when would the city do an ASP in this area? Is it usually if a major owner, like the one that owns the rest of the land, requests it? What would be what point would we do it?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, yes, any applicant could come and request the council for their approval to initiate the ASP. It's preferable that they are the major landowner, but it doesn't have to be, because sometimes priorities are different, and we just work with them.
And I think we just had that. So if the city, though, says, well, we just, whatever, we have too many projects, we don't have time to do it right now, then if the landowner pays, even if it's a portion, then it can go forward anyways, as long as they foot the bill?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, yes, our process is the landowners apply for the area structure plan preparation. So they pay us the fees and they prepare the plan, and the city reviews it and council approves it.
Okay. And I guess my issue with this is just we annex this land to densify, to have more land for more population. Is this going to kind of defeat that? Because if this was just the original farmer on there or whatever, whoever owned it before, we couldn't force someone to sell it and develop it, but we could make a kind of a plan for when they are not there at some point. Is this kind of defeat the purpose of why we annexed to begin with?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, yes, that is correct. We annexed these lands for the city's future growth and the urban development in future. And so the AGS district was applied to these lands so that until we require these lands for the future urban development, these lands remain agricultural uses happen on them. And then when they are required, the urban development would happen. So if taking this piece out would mean that that piece is now not available for the urban development.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm back on the speaking order. So the question that I have, and it kind of relates to that, is our city policy now not that the developers or developing people, they're the ones who are preparing the ASPs? Because if I recall, Landrex and Strata both are required to do theirs. So the city would not do an ASP, right?
To your worship, we allow developers to do or the landowners to initiate the ASPs, but I don't think we have a policy that says the city cannot do it. So if we want to start our own area structure plan, we should be able to.
Ms. Smith?
To your worship, just to elaborate on Ms. Shindy, she is correct. The city could initiate an ASP, but our process has been that it's landowner or developer initiated.
Okay. This question's going to be way out there because I'm just concerned about the order in which this is done. And I know you've said give it first reading and allow for the public hearing, but I'm wondering, because there isn't an ASP even in the works, would it not be better to table this until an ASP comes forward? I'll put that one to Ms. Smith.
To your worship, that would require a deferral, and I believe a deferral would require first reading. And if you were to give first reading to a bylaw and wait till the ASP is prepared, I think it would take a significant amount of time, and the first reading of the bylaw may expire. So I'm not sure if that is an option. It's something that we could take away and consider. From a legislative perspective, but it's important to keep in mind that the applicant has made the submission and has requested a decision from council. So I would recommend enabling the process.
Okay, no, and I understand that. So I have to ask the question, when the person or group came forward, were they told they need to do an ASP?
To your worship, yes, that was discussed. However, we also realized it wasn't a desirable option for them. So they were also given the recommendation that we have in the report to limit the development to the disturbed area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris?
Just kind of going back over process here. So ultimately, when a land developer owns land, such as Landrex or Qualico or whatnot, they have an explicit purpose to develop the land, and they follow an appropriate process, which is ultimately contingent upon our planning documents, and then they feed into it by the creation of an ASP, which goes through an appropriate vetting process, and ultimately we look at it in context with similar uses on adjacent lands and so on and so forth. So in this case, we have a landowner who is not a developer, who doesn't have that level of experience, and ultimately they would be then placed in a bit of a challenging position to step into. They're a church, and so they're just looking to build a building. So if we don't give this particular bylaw first reading today, to start the process of a public hearing, kind of going where where the mayor was going, then ultimately we can continue to have conversations with the applicant to get to a point so that they can understand and follow appropriate planning regime, correct? Would that be another alternative? And I think you've kind of laid it out in the alternatives in the report.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I would say yes.
Good. Now, I guess Ms. Duguid-Smith has just indicated that, obviously if we didn't proceed with it, that elongates the process and potentially it kills readings and so on and so forth. So I guess I'm on the horns of a dilemma because I understand the need of this applicant to want to build a church.
Question.
But I understand, and that's why I was asking the question about the process in terms of, so they ultimately then have to build a tentative ASP for this area, correct? Or it just doesn't make sense?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, or they could limit their development to the disturbed area.
Can what?
They could limit their church, a new church footprint to the disturbed area, where the already existing development is on the site, and don't take any more undisturbed land from the future development.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And to follow up on that line of questioning, I'm looking at figure 3, which is page 35 of the council package, kind of has an expanded view of that particular piece of property. Would it be possible, how would admin view a suggestion from the landowner to subdivide this particular piece of property at this, going east-west from the Range Road to Ross Creek, following Ross Creek essentially, and then back to the Range Road on the northern boundary of the actual quarter section? In other words, subdivide out essentially the existing home site and expand it out to Ross Creek, which would give, in my estimation, 2.5 acres, maybe as much as 3, but I don't think so. Somewhere around 2.5 acres, not acres, pardon me, 2.5 hectares and would the landowner be, how would the administration view that subdivision of title and development then only of the northern portion, the smaller portion that's subdivided off? And if that happened, would that then keep the remaining balance of this land open for a subsequent ASP and for development levies and the rest of the stuff that normally comes along with development in the normal course?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, that would still not align with the municipal development policies. Also, the area to the east, which is closer to the creek, it is not suitable for the development because of the high water table.
And I understood that. There would be proper setbacks put in place as part of the development, I would think. But what I'm suggesting, I think, aligns very closely with what administration is suggesting. Just develop the existing home site. And all I'm saying is let's get it on a separate title so that when development is done on one title, it doesn't affect the ability to collect levies and go through the normal development process and planning process for the rest of the property. So I fail to understand the difference between what I'm suggesting and what administration is suggesting as alternative number 2.
Okay. Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, so again, the MDP policies basically says no conversion and fragmentation or subdivision without area structure plan. So we will not be in alignment with the policy, but we can take this back and take a look if subdividing the parcel would make things better. We can take a look at that.
And that's really all I'm asking. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Okay, we'll do another round. Councillor Harris.
What is our policy on spot zoning? Because ultimately what we're talking about, to allow that to happen, it would have to have an appropriate land use designated other than what it is today. So if you're going to designate it as a religious, a church, then it would have to have the zoning. So that would just be along Councillor Kelly's line of thinking. We'd subdivide that, designate it as a church site, whatever can be developed, and that would be a spot zone without adherence to higher level planning context, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, again, that will not align with the policy because the redistricting and subdivision is not permitted without an area structure plan.
So spot zoning is a bad thing in that context.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to go in the speaking order again. So I'm just curious why administration would even suggest that something could be built on the existing area, given that there's no area structure plan and it's new annex lands, and there is no plan for this. So why would that even be a suggestion?
To your worship, it would be more like a redevelopment on the site. So that would be an avenue through which the applicant could develop a church.
Okay.
Maybe Ms. Smith-Duguid could add to that.
So, Your Worship, or to Your Worship, I agree with Ms. Shindy's comments. It would be redevelopment. Anywhere outside of the yard would be considered new development. We're supportive of redeveloping the site because those rights have been provided to that area. We don't feel it is appropriate to extend rights to the undeveloped area without the additional planning.
Okay, so then to push that question further, so you feel like there's development rights, but if this is a new annexed area, I'll be honest, if there was a pig farm there, we probably wouldn't want them to redevelop it. So why would we even suggest any kind of redevelopment without having a total development plan? Because if it has to be tore down, then that falls into, you know, this is redeveloping the area. So I'm failing to understand how without all of these policies that would even be considered.
Yeah, it's a good point. Ideally, the planning would be in place before any development occurs. We did recognize that this is a group with a unique need and tried to work with them to find alternative solutions. This was something that was put forward, but it's not a perfect solution either.
Okay, I'll leave it for that for now. What is the wish of council? That appears to be all the questions. Councillor Blizzard.
I'll make the motion for first reading. And hang on, I gotta scroll up again to find it. I'll make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw C 3-24 to amend land use bylaw C 23-20 by as presented.
That'll be fine. You wish to speak to it?
You know, I'm not sure I agree with this, but I think first reading is the way to go, and then we can look at it more when it comes forward for public hearing and second, third reading.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now open for discussion and debate. So for myself, I'll support the first reading. I look forward to the public hearing and having a greater conversation for second and third reading. I probably would like a little more details about place of worship, how it's fleshed out, what would be included in that, because I'm surprised we don't have place of worship in the land use bylaw, or is that just for that section? I'm not sure. So I would probably like to see that fleshed out when it comes back for second and third as well. So at this point in time, I'll support it because it goes with our due process. So Councillor Harris.
Well, I'll reluctantly support first reading because I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. The applicant landowner needs to do a lot more work. And so I'll support first reading reluctantly. But I would like to have more specific information about what they're proposing and where on the site. If you're talking about they want to do it within a redevelopment area, when I look at the picture there, ultimately development up close to the range road would probably be somewhat out of the area that is impeded by high water table. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I'd like to know specifically what the applicant is proposing. Are they talking one church? How big is this building? And where would it be located? And if it straddles, and how is administration defining the, the disturbed area? And would the applicant be proposing to put that church within the disturbed area? And if so, where? Because that's a bit of it's not clear to me. And so I think we need to have a better appreciation for what's being proposed here, even if administration is supportive of development within the disturbed area of that portion of the quarter. So we need more information going forward.
Okay. Councillor Blizzard, anything on close? No. All right, the motion is now closed for first reading and scheduling a public hearing. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, now I'll ask, are there any notice of motions? Kind of skipped over the last one. Okay, not seeing any. Are there any points of interest? Not seeing any. Any councillor inquiries of administration? No? Then I will entertain a motion to go in camera as per the items listed under FOIP. Councillor Harris?
So moved.
All right. Councillor Harris makes that motion. I will close it. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.